politics was good 100 years ago. Today, politicians have no ability to solve any problems because they're not students of behavior, they're not students of agriculture, oceanography. They know nothing about the factors that operate the world. So they say things that people like to hear, and that gets them elected. Now, scientists, on the other hand, are not concerned with public approval. What they do, even if everybody on Earth believed the Earth was flat, they would say, "You're wrong. This is the evidence we have to support the fact that the Earth is round." But they don't say it's a little round, a little flat. That's politicians.
You are listening to the election fallout on opposition.
You know, it makes you feel helpless sometimes. Spaceships rushing by. Bombs big enough to bury continents. Men and women, ordinary men and women like you and me, able to press a button and bingo, everything's finished. And that boy, he wants to know if everything's going to turn out all right in the end. I hope so. I certainly hope so. We'll just have to see what's going to happen in this space race. This run to the sun or soon to the moon or whatever. Anyhow, cosmonauts and astronauts in their machines are up there now. Yes. You know, it's one thing to want to get into space. It's another thing to know what you want to get out of it. 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 What you want to get out of it.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And welcome to episode 35 of Election Fallout on oppositionradio.com. This marks 35 small podcasts for two men and 35 giant media wedgies for the Prime Minister of Cannibal. My name is Tony Lofen, and I'm joined as always by Mike Cook from Orillia, Ontario. How are you doing tonight, Mike?
I'm not too bad. Another day in the Dominion of Cannibal.
Yeah. Well, people will know what we're talking about later if they haven't caught it on the news, but apparently Stephen Harper's own minions like to refer to him as the Prime Minister of Cannibal.
Yeah, it's came out twice now. They're slipping. They're letting everything out of the bag.
Yeah, it's hilarious, man. Why don't we? Well, now that we mention it, why don't we?
Are you sure? We'll just play her up right now.
Yeah, let's do it.
Beyond compare, to ask you to join me in welcoming back to the Yukon the Prime Minister of Canada, the Right Honourable Stephen Harper.
He was thinking honourable in Canada at the same time, I guess.
Yeah, that becomes cannibal pretty quick.
And then I believe, was it Peter Kent that did it a second time?
Yeah, I believe so. At least this guy from the Yukon, you know, I mean, he's not a heavy hitter like Peter Kent, so at least he's got an excuse, i.e. he's not a really heavy hitter.
Right.
Well, I've never introduced a prime minister before, so
might as well make a mistake and say Cannibal instead of Canada.
Well, how are things going in Orillia these days, Mike?
Pretty good. You know, I was happy to attend a gathering of progressives here in Simcoe North on Sunday in the afternoon. We all met at an old schoolhouse that's converted to a community center now called Carley Hall.
Oh, yeah?
And it was fairly well attended. It was, of course, attended by, I would say, the party faithful of the three main opposition parties, the NDP, the Liberals, and the Green Party. And I would probably even say that it was mostly attended by Green Party members. The Greens seemed to be really, really enthusiastic about the cooperation idea. You know, which may be really good in the end, because if they just go and vote for Liberals or New Democrats in various ridings, they can actually possibly sway a few ridings. So,
if every Green Party voter became a strategic voter, Stephen Harper's career is done as Prime Minister.
Mm-hmm.
And I will tell you, there's a little bit of rumblings in my riding here in Nipissing-Temiskaming pertaining to cooperation, and the loudest noise being made is from my friends in the Green Party. I'll tell you straight up. And my intention is to support that effort in any way, shape, or form that I can.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm glad to see the enthusiasm, and it's not to say that there aren't Liberals and New Democrats that aren't interested in some form of cooperation either, but it does seem likely, in my riding anyways, that both the Liberals and New Democrats don't plan to run a single candidate. Doesn't seem to be something that will be likely. And they were both fairly upfront with that when asked by the local newspaper here, the Packet and Times, which I heard a person refer to it as the racket, and what did they call it? The racket. They referred to it as a racket, anyways.
Racket goes with crime, which rhymes with time.
Racket and crimes. That's what they called it. And so the media turned out. They listened. And it got some mention in the newspaper, which was good. And it was interesting to hear the variety of different ideas. It was a very preliminary meeting in my mind, and it was important that people got a chance to talk. And every idea, from an independent candidate to an independent group that would evaluate the situation and then make suggestions. There was a number of different ideas supporting other ridings in electing in not electing Conservatives. So I'm interested to see where it goes.
Right on.
And I'm glad to hear that you guys might do that in North Bay and Nipissing too.
Well, I'm just glad to hear you guys got it going on. I think now your riding is much more important to have cooperation than mine. The Liberal here lost by 18 votes. But I understand in your riding there's no realistic challenger to the Conservatives if there's no cooperation, correct?
No, here in Simcoe North, the Conservative won by a margin of 5,000 votes when you combine all three of the opposition parties' totals. Now, Ryan Barber, who was a Liberal speaker at this event, he made an interesting point, though, that while the Conservatives have managed to increase their vote totals over the last three elections, that actually the amount of voters, the voter turnout, is going down in Simcoe North. So something needs to happen to change people's minds about not going out and voting. I guess they're so depressed that they know it's just going to be a Conservative victory, so they don't vote. And ironically, that could be what's leading to a Conservative victory here. But it looks like that'll be more than one election cycle of an issue to deal with. But
exactly. I mean, the fact that the Progressive vote is so split and the Conservatives are so popular may be demoralizing the Progressives in your riding. Maybe cooperation is the kind of thing that will give people, hope that you can unseat the Conservative and get them back out to the polls,
Mm-hmm. I'm hoping that Ryan will join us in a future show. He had some really good, that was just the tip of the iceberg of what he talked about, and I'm sure that if he joins us, he'll have a lot to talk about. So,
well, I'm glad to hear that in the 2 weeks that have passed since our last show, that you've been doing something productive in your community, politically speaking. I wish I could say the same thing for myself.
Well, I'm going to admit one thing. I went to this meeting and I was chomping at the bit to say something, and at each moment I decided not to, because I don't think they would have been able to shut me up. Yeah. So I just sat back and I listened, more or less. I did write down a few suggestions they had a list of where you could write down suggestions as well, and I wrote a few things down there. But I was glad to hear most of the ideas that I had or I had heard other people have that I thought were good ideas were brought up, and it was fairly well represented, and it wasn't just people dreaming about maybe doing something. I think we're really going to, whether we achieve anything or not will be the difficult part, but we're going to do something anyways.
It'll be interesting to see how that plays out for you, and we'll on the show we'll follow your efforts there in Simcoe North.
And that meeting was thanks to Ryan Barber, Doris Middleton, and Alec Adams, Liberal, New Democrat, and Green Party, respectively. And they have another, I think, 6 people from each of the parties that are also involved, but they were the main speakers, and I definitely would like to mention them and say thank you to them.
Yeah. Right on. Well, I mean, myself, I wish, like I said before, I wish I could say that I had done something productive with my time. Yeah, I do things like sabotaging myself using my Facebook status updates.
Uh-oh.
On the day that
somebody not like what you said on your Facebook page?
Oh man, I couldn't help it. On the day that that Neil Armstrong died, I put my Facebook status as one small step for a man, one giant hoax for mankind. And
right.
Man, did I ever get flamed? Oh my God. A lot
Were
of people
upset at you just because he had passed away and they didn't think that it was a too soon moment, or was it? Were they worried that that was your real impression of the situation, or? Well,
I think that everyone assumed that that's my real impression of the situation, and even there were a substantial amount of people that agree with me. The nicest thing someone said to me was, "Wow, I mean, I agree with you, but I can't believe you said it." You know what I mean? Oh well, but it leads me to think about how we've treated conspiracy type information on our show. We've steered very clear of it, but I know you and I have had talks in the past about how some conspiracy is taken too far and it discredits real information and stuff like that, right?
Right.
I don't know. It's such a tough thing. Like I really don't think that it was scientifically possible, technologically possible in the 60s to send a man to the moon and return him safely to Earth. The whole thing smacks of a Hollywood production. The circumstantial case against Neil Armstrong taking his step onto the moon is overwhelming. But I still can't believe I said it. Like, maybe I could have kept that to myself. What do you think?
Well, I don't know. I mean, when it comes to issues like that, I mean, I suppose most people's concern, I thought, would just be because he had recently passed away. But I don't think it was necessarily disrespectful to Neil Armstrong, because if you do question it and you don't, you believe there's evidence enough to question it, even if you don't have a known outcome, I don't know. I think that's probably fair game. I've spent I've mentioned this on previous shows, just as you have. I've spent my fair time in various aspects of what people would call conspiracy theory research, and I'll admit that the moon landing is one that I haven't paid a lot of attention to. Now, I'm not saying that I'm dismissing it at the same point either, because I don't, but I have heard in passing some of the arguments against it, and
well, let's put it this way: I don't bring it up for the purposes of getting into it at all, but I do bring it up because it relates to a very, very tricky ground. Like, a lot of the people that associate or identify with with progressive politics, left-wing politics, or the Occupy movement, you will find a lot of Alex Jones fans in there. You know what I mean? You will find a lot of 9/11 truthers. You will find a lot of and those people have to be engaged. They're on our side.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'll tell you what. They are on our side. So those people and the way their outlook in the world has to be engaged at some level. And I wound up in
to you, were they?
What's that?
Those weren't the people responding to you.
You know who I wound up in a debate with on my Facebook page was a very good friend of mine who is a PhD in physics. He just got back from Germany, and he's taken a post at UBC, postdoctoral type work. I don't think he's a professor, but I think he'll be working in their lab doing his postdoctoral stuff.
Right.
So I got into it with him, and I mean, we talked about the physical evidence and blah 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 blah. And at one point in time, he said he always didn't want to go towards the circumstantial stuff, right? For example, the fact that NASA lost all the telemetry data. Like, almost all the data pertaining to this thing got lost. Do you know what I mean? It's pretty.
So the evidence that would support it, if there was some, is missing.
Is gone. Yeah,
that always starts to make red flags.
So he didn't want to talk about that. He wanted to talk about the sheer physics of it, which is fine. You can engage this on many different levels.